The rain had turned the French hedgerows into black rivers of mud when the British patrol first saw the movement. Small, frantic, fluttering. At first they thought it was a wounded sparrow trapped among the thorns. Only when they came closer did they see the metal capsule strapped to the bird's leg, glinting faintly beneath the dull morning light. The creature was a German field courier, barely alive, its feathers coated with dirt and cordite soot. Sergeant Miller crouched beside it, opened the capsule, and slid out a tiny strip of paper. He expected coordinates, a supply request, maybe a weather report. Instead, he found a page covered in looping symbols, broken clusters of letters, and odd spacing patterns that made no sense at all. No British soldier in that patrol could read it, and none of them understood why their sergeant suddenly inhaled sharply. Miller had seen captured codes before, but nothing like this. He knew instantly that the message had to be sent to London, to the only place where impossible ciphers ever had a chance of being solved. Within hours, the bird and its mysterious note were on a military truck heading toward Bletchley Park. And when the strip of paper reached the desk of the legendary cryptanalyst Dilly Knox, he recognized something unsettling. This was not machine work, not field discipline encryption. This looked personal, almost handcrafted. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe for more rare wartime revelations like this one. And keep watching, because what Knox discovered next would challenge everything the British thought they understood about enemy codes. Corporal Elias Hartmann had never considered himself a cryptographer. He was a scout, one of the quiet ones, moving through the undergrowth long before dawn, listening more than speaking. His partner, Otto Weber, walked a half-step behind him on every patrol, a man with sharp instincts and an uncanny sense for direction. Together they made up the reconnaissance pair that their battalion commander trusted most. Radios were unreliable on their sector of the front. Allied units triangulated signals fast, and German sets crackled with interference whenever the weather shifted. More than once, a careless transmission had drawn artillery directly onto friendly positions. So Hartmann and Weber chose a different method, born not from protocol but from necessity. During long, sleepless nights in freezing barns and shattered farmhouses, they invented a private cipher, something fluid, personal, and impossible for anyone else to replicate. They borrowed shapes from signposts in their childhood village, folded in fragments of stories told by their fathers, and built shifting letter patterns that changed with the route they walked each day. No key existed, nothing was written down. Only they understood how the system moved. The beauty of their invention was not sophistication but intimacy. A machine could not predict memories. A cryptanalyst could not reconstruct childhood associations. Only two men, sharing the same experiences and the same roads, could follow its logic. Their commander never asked how they produced such clear intelligence reports. He simply noted their accuracy and the speed with which their pigeons returned. The bird captured by the British that morning had carried one of Hartmann's most urgent updates, a warning about an Allied convoy shifting its route through the narrow lanes west of Caen. If the message reached German lines intact, their regiment would be in perfect position. If it didn't, no one but Hartmann and Weber would ever understand what had been lost. The captured bird and its capsule arrived at Bletchley Park late in the afternoon, carried into the main hut by an intelligence runner who knew from the sealed envelope alone that this was not a routine field cipher. Most intercepted German messages followed recognizable structures, repetitive markers, mechanical spacing, identifiable call signs, but the strip of paper handed to the duty officer that day had none of those features. It showed fragmented clusters of letters, uneven indentation, and symbol combinations that did not appear in any catalogued German system. That alone justified escalation. The message was brought to Dilly Knox, the veteran cryptanalyst whose reputation rested not on machines, but on intuition. He had spent the early war years tackling classical ciphers, the kind that relied on human patterns instead of engineered complexity. If anyone could sense the logic behind an unfamiliar code, it was him. Knox studied the slip beneath the lamplight, his eyes shifting from the left margin to the broken center spacing. He counted frequencies, tested for substitution, and searched for rhythm, any rhythm, but found none. The absence of structure concerned him more than the code itself. German signals officers were disciplined. They favored reliability and predictability. This message had neither. It looked improvised, as though the writer had invented rules only he knew. Knox compared it to dozens of other intercepted bird messages and found no match. Whatever this was, it did not belong to any established cipher family. He wrote a brief note for the record: possible personal cipher, non-mechanical, unclear origin, extremely difficult. But the real question wasn't how to break it. It was why the Germans would trust a field operation to something so unconventional. Watch to find out what Knox uncovered next. While British analysts at Bletchley Park worked through the night, attempting to force structure onto a cipher that refused to obey logic, Corporal Elias Hartmann and Otto Weber were already deep in the forest that bordered the western approach to Caen. Their reconnaissance detachment had been ordered to confirm whether Allied supply vehicles were rerouting through a narrow set of lanes known for their bottlenecks. The regiment depended on rapid information, and Hartmann's earlier reports, sent by the pigeons that reliably returned to their roost, had shaped every movement now underway. German command believed Hartmann had an instinct for predicting Allied behavior. What they did not understand was that his instincts were not supernatural. They were the product of long observation, careful mapping, and the cipher he and Weber had built to compress information into simple strips of paper. By relying on their private system, Hartmann could send detailed intelligence in a fraction of the time standard military codes required. The cipher allowed them to report changing patrols, supply shifts, and vehicle movements in near real time without exposing their patterns to interception. As dawn approached, Hartmann and Weber positioned themselves along the tree line overlooking the road. Minutes later, they saw the Allied convoy appear exactly where Hartmann had predicted. Trucks rolled in single file, engines echoing off the trees. The ambush was swift. Mortars struck the lead vehicles, rifle fire scattered the escort, and within moments the Germans controlled the road. Prisoners were taken, equipment seized, and the regiment withdrew before Allied reinforcements could arrive. Back at the command post, praise centered on Hartmann's accuracy and timing. No one asked how the information had traveled so quickly or why it always seemed to arrive before the Allies changed course. Only Hartmann and Weber understood that their cipher, the one now sitting unsolved on Dilly Knox's desk, had made the entire operation possible. At Bletchley Park, the mysterious field message moved through several desks before returning once more to Dilly Knox, accompanied by a growing collection of failed attempts. Analysts had mapped symbol frequencies on large sheets, run substitution tests, and even compared the fragment to known German dialect spellings. Nothing aligned. The spacing looked deliberate but inconsistent. The symbols repeated, but not in any pattern that suggested a cipher wheel, book code, or grill. The message behaved like a system built without reference to military doctrine, an approach that deeply frustrated codebreakers trained to expect structure. Knox prepared a technical summary, noting the absence of predictable markers. He described the cipher as highly personal, likely dependent on knowledge, unavailable to intercepting analysts. These conclusions troubled some officers who feared they had stumbled upon a new German encryption method. But the message's irregularities convinced Knox otherwise. It lacked the precision of official systems. It felt more like a logic shared between individuals, an improvised cipher rather than an institutional breakthrough. Meanwhile, in the German sector, Hartmann's success during the convoy ambush earned him quiet praise from his commanding officer. His reconnaissance reports had consistently proven more accurate than those from neighboring units. What no one realized was that the speed and clarity of his information came from the cipher he and Weber had constructed. The method allowed them to communicate sensitive intelligence without delay and without compromising secrecy. Their regiment benefited repeatedly, unaware that one of their pigeons, and one of their most critical reports, had fallen into enemy hands. In Bletchley Park's archives, the message was labeled "unbroken," retained for further study. The question that lingered was simple. If this was personal invention, how many more like it existed, still hidden, still unbreakable? Discover what final truth emerged from this forgotten cipher. Decades after the war, the cipher-bearing strip of paper resurfaced during a routine review of Bletchley Park's archival materials. By then, most of the wartime code-breaking achievements had been declassified, studied, and celebrated. Machine ciphers such as Enigma and Lorenz were widely known. Field codes, weather reports, and operational messages had been catalogued and explained. But among the shelves of solved systems and annotated breakthroughs, the message carried by the captured German bird remained an outlier, one of the very few wartime ciphers that had resisted every attempt at interpretation. When modern cryptographers examined it, they found themselves arriving at the same conclusions Knox had written by hand so many years earlier. Frequency mapping led nowhere. Spacing analysis produced contradictions. Even computer modeling failed to uncover structure. The message looked like communication, but without the originating logic, it became an unmoving sequence of marks without context. That discovery pushed researchers to investigate the German reconnaissance units operating near Caen during the period the message was intercepted. Among personnel records and fragmentary war diaries, they found references to two scouts noted for their unusually accurate reports, Elias Hartmann and Otto Weber. Surviving veterans described them as quiet men who worked closely together, often away from the main unit. None could explain how they communicated so efficiently, only that their reports arrived quickly and were consistently reliable. No written instructions, notebooks, or cipher keys were ever found among their belongings. Hartmann and Weber had not survived the later stages of the war, and whatever method they used went with them. The encoded message preserved in the archive stands today as a rare reminder that even in a conflict defined by machines and mathematics, some of the most effective secrets were human, built on memory, trust, and shared understanding. And in this case, the code that protected an entire operation remained unbroken, not because it was advanced, but because no one else ever knew how to read the minds of the men who made it.